breaking news to report to you regarding the Idaho murder case. The four murdered students in Idaho, Bryan Kohberger in jail awaiting the next hearing in June, a gag order, making it very difficult to sort of put the pieces together in this very strange mystery. But we are learning something tonight about Bryan Kohberger and his predilections. On his phone, according to People magazine and News Nation's reporting as well, on Bryan Kohberger's phone, numerous pictures of one of the victims. I had a chance to talk with Steve Helling, who's investigative reporter with People magazine, about some of the findings regarding that piece of information, the fact that Kohberger's phone had loads of pictures of one of the victims. This is our conversation earlier.
So, somebody who's very familiar with the investigation says that after they arrested Bryan Kohberger, they took his phone, which of course is what you'd expect. And now that they've been looking at his phone, they have all of his communications. They have all of the things that you would have on your phone. And one of the things that they looked at were the pictures. And there are pictures of at least one of the victims in his photo roll. We don't know the details of those pictures. We don't know whether they are pictures he took from a distance. We don't know if they're pictures he downloaded from her social media, but he had pictures of one of the female victims on his phone.
And is anyone pointing to which one of the three female victims might be the one who's on his phone?
I mean, we all have our suspicions, and of course the cops certainly know, but that's not something that they're telling. There's a gag order in place. They can't tell us all these details. But yes, it was one of the three female victims, and cops sure know who they are. You and I could guess all day, and we'd probably guess correctly, but we don't have that officially.
And of course, without even being able to name them, it's hard to push further to suggest, is that person potentially the target of all of this? Like, was there one person who was the target and maybe the other three ended up as collateral? Are they saying anything about that?
Well, before the second gag order came along, we were getting, you were getting it, I was getting it, we were getting these tips. And, I think that they had a pretty good idea, even back then, a month ago, of who the primary target was. Whether or not these pictures are of that person, who you and I both pretty much know, remains to be seen.
So what else did they get, or are you able to find out about from, combing his photo rolls? Is there any other clue in there?
No, but it certainly seems as though he was, he was very aware of what was going on in this house. We know that. Obviously, besides the photos, we already know that his phone just kept pinging from that area. So, he'd been there several times. So I think the phone is going to be a real treasure trove of information for the investigators, not just from the pictures, not just from, we don't know the texts he sent. We do know, as we talked about a few weeks ago, that he had reached out to one of the girls on Instagram. So, there's going to be a lot of tracks there that they can look at, and, tracks that I don't think that he covered.
There's one line in your exclusive where your source says it looked as though Kohberger was certainly, quote, paying attention to her. Were you able to read into that any further?
I think paying attention means something more than just, noticing somebody. Paying attention means that you are, purposefully and very deliberately, keeping track of somebody, keeping track of who they are, what they're doing, that type of thing. So there was somebody who was on his radar for a while. And that person, that girl, was unfortunately one of the victims.
All this time we've been trying to figure out the nexus between, this alleged killer and these victims. And the only connection that so far can really be made is the fact that he's a vegan. Mm-hmm. And Xana and Maddie both worked at the Mad Greek, which is one of the best vegan, restaurants in that area of both Pullman and Moscow. So from what I've heard from my sources in Pullman, if you're a vegan in Pullman, you have been to the Mad Greek many times. It is one of your go-to places. Do we know if there's any connection to the two victims who worked at the Mad Greek, Xana and Maddie, and this photograph?
Sure. Well, what I would say is that we reported about a month ago that he had been to the Mad Greek, and then the Mad Greek came out with a statement that basically said, somebody is trying to cash in on 15 minutes of fame, I think referring to the former employee who had given that information up. But they never, ever denied for sure that he was there. They just said somebody is trying to cash in on some fame here. So, I think that we can pretty much surmise that, the restaurant, the phone, all of this type of stuff is something that police have looked into very, very carefully to make sure that they understand kind of the timeline of how did these girls, or at least how did one of these girls, get onto Bryan Kohberger's radar? And she did somehow. Somehow he found her and targeted her, allegedly. And so that was really, what the cops are looking at right now.
And then just one more clarity on your exclusive, and it's pictures plural, right? It's not just one picture. He had pictures plural of at least one victim.
Right. Then that could be 2. That could be 450. We don't know. We just know it's more than one. You can have a picture of somebody on your phone and not be fixated on that person. But more than one certainly means that, whether or not he took more than one, I'm the worst. When I take pictures of my food, I take 4 pictures of it. So, it could have been something like that, or it could be that he downloaded things from her Instagram or screenshotted things from her Instagram. So
yeah, that's the other thing, right? Because we don't know if it's downloaded or if they were actually snapped on his phone. There's no way to tell between that. Well, at least they're not telling us. They would know.
They're not telling us, but they certainly know, because every picture you take, it tells, you can figure out exactly where a picture was taken, when it was taken, all of that. And people who know a lot more about computers than I do can figure that out. So you better believe that the cops are doing that.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more.
I think you'll find this very interesting.
The search warrants that were sought for Snapchat asked for data for all the housemates between June 23 and August 1st. Why those dates? They were murdered on November 13th. They wanted all communications, locations data, user content, communications between other accounts and third parties, and if any accounts had been suspended. It's curious as well. From TikTok, the authorities had warrants that looked at Bryan Kohberger's account from June 1st straight on, no end date, June 1st onward. They wanted, quote, everything. They wanted all content, location data, anything he deleted, the people he followed and unfollowed, the people he blocked, his privacy settings, and his search history. And for his fitness tracking, they wanted the biometrics and the geolocation for Bryan Kohberger.
Hold on, because I have a lot more to go that you guys are going to be really interested in. This video is not on YouTube, by the way. There's so much in this video I want to play you. I'm going to show you a clip that pertains to metadata, other cell phone evidence. I'm going to rewind it because it says something really interesting about the handprint.
Let's bring in Ted Williams, former DC police detective, defense attorney, and a Fox News contributor. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. I want to show you these pictures from the Daily Mail showing the crime scene. We can pull them up on our screen here so people can take a look. What's your takeaway when you look at this? It looks like a pretty typical scene for college students, but does the clutter, the disorganization, does that make it harder or easier to find evidence?
Well, Jack, it makes it more difficult for law enforcement, but you're right. It is a typical college room. They're shared by, at least now we know, 6 students. But when we look at this complete scenario here, what has taken place, it is, we get more from the family about what is taking place than we are getting from law enforcement. But when you look at the inside or the interior of that home, where you have really 3 stories, and the killer's killing took place on the 2nd floor and on the 3rd floor, it leads me to believe that it was someone who had some knowledge of that home. And if you are on the 1st floor, the only way you can get into this home is through the front door. If you're on the 2nd floor, where or at least 2 of the individuals were killed, you can get in through the back door, which is a sliding glass door. But whoever killed these 4 students certainly would have been covered in blood. And I would hope that what the authorities would do is put out more information that the public can use other than just this targeting, because this targeting has been very contradictory. At one stage, they said that the students or the house was not targeted. If those were not the targets, then what was or who was the target? And so you've got a frustrated community out there that have not been given enough information.
Yeah. Ted, in one of those pictures that we saw, there's a computer monitor that is still on. It's displaying an error message. But then in some of the other pictures, there's not very much that looks like it's been knocked over or ransacked. Does that, in your mind, help to rule out any motives? There's a computer monitor that is still on. It's displaying an error message. But then in some of the other pictures, there's not very much that looks like it's been knocked over or ransacked. Does that, in your mind, help to rule out any motives?
Well, I don't think they can rule out anything at this stage, Jackie. I'm sure that law enforcement has taken a look at that computer. They've looked around each and every one of these rooms. As you know, this was and is a crime scene. And up until yesterday, the automobiles in front of this crime scene was left in place, frozen in time.
Yeah.
So they have done, meaning law enforcement, a deep scrub of those street theories to try to determine who is or was the killer. And so what they're now doing is through forensics. They are going back. They're looking at the test of the forensics. They know that this was at one time a party house. So they're now trying to do a process of elimination to try to find the killer. They're trying to also talk to anybody who knew any of these 4 students to find out if there were any beefs that anybody would have had against any one of these 4 students that would have led to this kind of a murder.
You know, we learned from one of the victim's fathers, notably not from the police, that his daughter died in the same bed as her best friend. So one question investigators have now is, how was a killer able to overtake 2 victims at the same time? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things is it could have been what was their state, meaning Madison and Kaylee, because they were both found on the 3rd floor in a bedroom together. But we do know that there was some defensive wounds about some of these individuals' bodies. So that meant that there could very well have been someone who fought. The medical examiner said that she believes that they were asleep when they were initially attacked. But during the course of the attack, somebody or somebody's fought.
Okay, just a few more things for us to go over.
When I said I want to get into the nitty gritty, that's Clark Walton's space. He is a principal forensics and cybersecurity expert for Reliance Forensics. He's board certified in data security. He's a former cybersecurity analyst for the CIA. He's also a former prosecuting attorney. Mwah, chef's kiss. You are perfect, Clark, for this. Get me sort of on and off the ledge on this, because I always want to know that there's lots of evidence. If you're going to bring a guy in and charge him with quadruple murder, I want to know that there's lots of really good evidence. This would seem like it would put a guy right in the room alongside the DNA on the knife sheath. But why might it not work? Let's just look at the other side. Why might this not work?
Right. So your phone, as you know, when you're walking around with it, it is trying to talk to the rest of the world any number of ways, right? Bluetooth and your cellular antenna and near field communication. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those attempted handshakes that you just referenced are necessarily being recorded. Not every single action that your phone takes is necessarily going to stick with that phone. If a forensic examiner were to look at it days, weeks, months later, yes, that handshake could have occurred, but is there going to be a record of it on the device that a forensic examiner can pull back?
Okay, so let me take that one step further, and I'm going to just be full disclosure here. I am a complete idiot when it comes to this stuff. I have to hit all the buttons 100 times and then reset just to get something to work. But I do know this, my phone is connected to my Bluetooth speaker, and my phone knows when I go from portrait to landscape, and it keeps that as a record, as I learned in the Murdaugh trial. What if Kaylee's speaker was connected to her phone? Because presumably they're all up on the 3rd floor, right? You're gonna have your phone upstairs when you go to bed, even if you're 50 feet away in the other bedroom. Will that perhaps keep a record?
That would keep a record. And so have you ever noticed, you'll spend a night in a hotel and you'll not come back to that hotel for months, and then you'll go back to that hotel and it will automatically connect your phone back to Wi-Fi like you'd been there the day before. Your iPhone does keep a record of what Wi-Fi networks you've connected to, certain information about those networks, the name, the password, the last date and time, importantly, potentially for this case, the last date and time that phone was connected to that Wi-Fi network. And the same works for Bluetooth as well. It keeps a listing of Bluetooth assets that you have connected to at a certain point in the past in time. So let's say hypothetically, at some point in the past, Kohberger's phone had initiated or completed a handshake with really any other device in proximity to that house, coming back in close proximity to that house, even if the phone were in airplane mode, as was pointed out, that Bluetooth connection may likely still be enabled, and that handshake could occur. That evidence would stay on the phone, and that's something that a forensic examiner could later take and say, yes, this phone was within Bluetooth communication of this speaker, this microphone.
Okay, and I'm going to stop there because I don't want to keep you guys too long. I want to present this information. So a lot of some of the stuff I'll be talking about this weekend, just digital evidence that I've been kind of the last of what I want to present for my metadata research that I just haven't got around to putting into a video. So here you go. And
don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's.
And I know there's a lot of new people following this case, so I thought for those who haven't seen this.
There's a student that revealed he was in a remote photography group, which is kind of vague. I don't know if that's a after school sort of group or if it's a class that you're earning credits for. Is this some sort of extracurricular thing? But this student wrote in a forum, which then was taken down. But I have screenshots of the archived conversation where they're talking about this group has a camera on a tripod somewhere behind the King Roadhouse, and it was recording during the night of the crimes. I'm going to read you what the convo was about, and then you guys decide for yourself what you think. Now, I've done videos on this in the past, but I didn't actually have the screenshots of the archived conversation. But I found them now, and so I'm going to read them here, and then you guys can discuss in the comments what you think. I just found out my remote photography group has video from a tripod that was stationed behind the house. It recorded from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and shows a woman running from the side of the house as a truck entered the driveway. She ran away from the house and right by our tripod at approximately almost but not completely accurate or exact, roughly 2 a.m. A group member removed the tripod, and I don't know who has the video. It is the group's right to not disclose why we record. but we would send in recordings in special circumstances. Okay, this is so messed up. I don't even know where to begin, but it continues. So another person writes, then call the LE and give them your information, which sounds like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't they have done that? Unless they were afraid of turning it in. And then it continues. Another poster writes, quote, group member reported the video was sent to Idaho State Police. Our group has been removed from FB for various policy violations, end quote. And then that's all I have. The group didn't follow up on this conversation. And I know other people were talking about there being...
Okay, so I'm just going to stop there. It's really interesting